Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents with me, your host Valerie, and sometime co-host Miss Purrington, and Mookie, our newest co-host. ComedyWham.com is your place to go for features about all Austin comedy. You can keep up with us on Twitter and Instagram at Comedy Wham or on our Comedy Wham Facebook page. In addition to podcasts, Comedy Wham brings you articles, album reviews, our advice column, Rochelle Takes on Comedy, and we've also got a festivals page and our recently wrapped up FPIA 2022 page where you can see the results along the way and the final results of the contest. And of course, we're best known for our events page for live shows in Austin, Houston, and DFW. If you're a comic in those cities and want your show featured on the calendar, go to the events page and click Submit a Show to complete the short survey. Tag us on your Instagram stories or posts and we'll share your show promo. Looking for ways to support all these resources we provide? You can donate to Comedy Wham on PayPal, Venmo, or even Patreon. Search for Comedy Wham on Patreon and check out our subscriber perks. Now let's get back to our podcast. Launched in 2016, the Podcast Project brings you funny people and their stories. As a fan, I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations and will usually take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the Austin comedy scene one of the best in the country. If you like this podcast, please rate and review us. Today, I am talking to the co-host of Lonely Man's podcast. I hear that sometimes they have not hit the record button either on their episodes. You know, not that I would ever do that as a podcasting professional of 6 years. But back to our guest. He's been on the Big Pine Comedy Festival. He is originally from Africa, grew up in Colorado, started comedy in Boston, and is now based in Austin. And this is a true fact. When I saw him perform for the very first time, it was at a show at the Creek in the Cave earlier this year. My son was with me, and he was adamant that I interview our guest because he found him so hilarious and interesting, and I did too. His backstory is really, really cool. And now Comedy Wham presents our guest, Ben Bosunga.
Thank you for having me. It feels like I've been here before.
It
a very
does.
deja vu
So
moment.
Deja vu, Bob.
It is wild to me when I walked in and you called me Bob. Like, my name gets butchered all the time, but it's never my first name. No one's ever like, Ben, I don't know where is that from, you know?
First for everything. If anything, that will make this Comedy Wham experience memorable for you. Oh, that girl? Yeah, she called me Bob. Oh, my gosh. Well, let's see. The last time we were talking, but not recording, we were talking about the French and how we have that in common.
Yes, I do speak I understand French much better than I speak it. Like, I used to speak it fluently, but then you come down to Texas and people are like, French, those are fries, right? Like, they don't know. Nobody speaks it. So it's been a while since I had to use it, and that muscle has atrophied to terrible extents. My mother would be ashamed right now. She would just be shaking her head in disappointment at my French. But yeah, I don't like to tell people because I don't want anyone to challenge me on it. You know, like when someone says they're a sports fan and they're like, name 5 NBA players. They're like, ah. So I don't want to be like, I speak French. They're like, speak French. I'm like, ah. So but I do understand it, and if I think about it quite a bit, I can manage in French. So.
Yeah, well, I won't force you to do the rest of the interview.
Merci beaucoup. There it is.
I mean, my French is like, it is because I left when I was 7. That is the level of my French. Like, it's very kindergarten, first grade level. It's no advanced vocabulary, but I can ask where's the restroom.
Right. How have you maintained it? Like, do you still speak it to certain family members or people that you talk to back in Belgium? Like,
it really was that when we moved over here, my mom and dad spoke it at home, so I kept it up that way. And then every other summer, I would be sent back to Belgium to stay with my grandmother. So I immersion every other summer.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. We didn't do that. Congo's not the place you just go back to. No, it's just like, we're gonna vacation in the Congo. Like, that's not. I don't know if anyone knows anything about the Congo. Apparently, according to comedy, it's so funny because I was out in Scotland recently and I was doing the Fringe Festival, And I do a bit about being from Africa and Congo. And like I do the same bit here in the States. And I always ask people if they can find the Congo on a map. And in Scotland, everyone would be like, "Yeah, we all know where the Congo is. Like we know geography. We know this." Everyone in the States is like, "Congo, that's like the drums, right?" Like they have no idea. I say DRC, and they're like, "The Dominican Republic." I'm like, "Yes, yes, you're the problem. You are the problem." So yeah, no one here knows anything about the Congo. So yeah.
Well, in Texas, we're ranked like 46th in the nation. So, I mean, we probably can't find Africa on the global map, so.
Right. Africa is at the top of food. Like, yeah they just, it makes you, it's not even just Texas. Even in Boston, that's supposed to be like an educated state. Yeah, and there's always like one person. Even in Colorado, everywhere I go in America, they're just like, Congo. I heard of that one time. There's a movie about that, right? Like, yeah, that's the extent of, and now the kids don't even know that movie, so no one knows. Perfect.
Well, welcome to geopolitical talk. Let's break the ice formally for the second time. This is about where I realized we weren't recording, so everything else will be fresh conversation. Ben, tell me one word to describe your past.
If I had to describe my past in one word, I'd probably say adventurous. Or maybe mischievous. I was kind of a wild child in the sense that I just always wanted to try new things, and I was just always kind of wandering anywhere, any trip, anything that would get me in trouble, anything that I wasn't supposed to be doing. I was like, yeah, so I'd probably say one of those two words.
Yeah. Oh, man, your world travels are so fascinating to me that it's going to be really difficult for me to kind of focus us on comedy and not go into like all of the world travels that
I think they go hand in hand, you know. I think like because I didn't start comedy till I was 27, so I was a little bit later than like most of the young comics now, which kind of put me in a different place. I kind of had experienced a lot more than like comics when they started like 19, 20 or 23 even. So I think the traveling kind of it put it in perspective what I kind of wanted to do, because I wasn't one of those people that's like, I want to be a musician or I want to be a businessman, whatever. I was just kind of like, yeah, life is pretty cool. I'm just going to kind of experience everything. And so when I graduated college, I was like, I'm going to go move to a beach in South America and just live that life. And my parents were like, you should probably get a job, Benjamin. Like my mom was like, Benjamin, get a job. Do not play around like this. So then I did the job thing for like 2 years, and I was like, man, I should have went to that beach in South America. But so then after that, I was probably around like 25 or so, and I'd tried a couple of open mics right when I graduated college. Like I did open mics for a couple of months before I started working in corporate America, and I was terrible, like absolutely terrible. Like I would so nervous, I would be like sweating through my shirts, and I'd get up there and like fumble the mic, and I'd be so then I was like, maybe I should drink. And I'm a terrible drinker. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea. So then I would be like way too drunk, and I couldn't remember my jokes. I close my eyes on stage and try to remember. So I'm just like, just like wobbling on stage. So it was not good. So then, so I didn't do. So that was like a couple months. I probably went to like maybe like 5 open mics in like 3 months or whatever. And so after that, I was like, all right. So I went into corporate America. So then after,
what was it that got you to that first open mic?
I've nothing to do. That is the thing. I was 22, nothing to do. But I always watched comedy as a kid. So, like, me and my brothers, like, introduced me to comedy. And we used to watch, like, old school Def Jam comedy. So, it was, like, back then, it was, like, Bernie Mac, Chris Tucker was on there. Dave Chappelle was on there. Ronald Hamburger Jones. Like, the original king of comedy, like, with Steve Harvey, D.L. Hughley, Bernie Mac, and Cedric the Entertainer. And then my favorite comedy specials, though, when I was a kid, was we used to watch Eddie Murphy, Delirious. And I've seen Eddie Murphy Delirious. Like, I can name, like, I could go, like, word for word the whole special, like, all the jokes. So it was, like, that special. And then around the time I was, like, 10 or 11, I really got into Dave Chappelle. His first special, Killing 'Em Softly, and then the Chappelle Show, and then the second special, For What It's Worth. I was like, this is everything. So then I'd always watched it, and as I grow up and like watch more comedy, I was like, I could do that. It could be really cool to do that. And then afterwards, I had some time. I was like, yeah, let me try to do it. And And I was like, oh, I can't do this.
This was in Boston.
No, this was in Colorado.
Oh,
still.
okay.
Yeah, so then, so this was in Colorado. That's where I went to like high school. That's where I grew up. That's where I went to college as well, Colorado State University. Go Rams. And yeah, so then this was after I graduated. I was like, I've always wanted to do comedy. I have some time. I'm over 21 now. I can get into some like bars and clubs or whatever.
Yeah.
So I went around Denver, try to find some open mics, and that's when I was like, oh. But then I got a corporate job, started working for like a couple of years, and I was like, this sucks. This really sucks. And I couldn't do comedy because I was working so much, and I'd work like 12-hour days. I was in like, yeah, you're working like these long days, and every other manager in the company was like over 30, and I'm over there like 23, pretending to be 28, just like being people's bosses, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just like, this is miserable. Ugh. And then after that, I was like, all right, I need to do something different. I worked at a TV studio for the for the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Huh. So I did that for like a year. That was really cool because I got to see like the sports, got to go to the games and like work in the studio and stuff. But yeah, that didn't go well either. You know, just turned out having a boss isn't really my thing.
Okay. I was gonna ask you. So what was the the common thread?
Yeah, the common thread is no one can. I'm terrible at letting people tell me what to do. I'm like the most stubborn. You can't tell me anything. Like, not my parents, not my teachers, nobody. You can just one ear and out the other. If I don't think it came from my own brain, I'm like, oh, you don't know anything. I know better. And then I'm like, shit, they were right. Like, I can't. I'm one of those people, like, I can't learn from other people's mistakes. I have to make that same mistake 7 times. And, like, time number 12, I'm like, I got this. Like, but so then after that, I went to work on cruise ships for a while. Huh. So that was interesting.
Doing what?
So I did a combination of things on cruise ships, but I was working with kids. So I always kind of did that in college and in high school. I'd work at like summer camps. I'd work at like basketball coaching for kids, worked at schools, just did all sorts of stuff like that. And then on the ships, I worked in a kids center as well. And then I became like an indoor surf instructor. So I was just like indoor surfing, rock climbing, wall teaching people how to do that stuff. So that was about what I did there for a couple of years. And that was cool. We got to travel all around to the island. So I went all over Central America, went to like pretty much like all the Caribbean islands. I've been out there, Bermuda, like Costa Rica, all over Mexico, like just all like St. John, Martin, St. Thomas, like all those places I've been. Every beach is the same after a while, though. It really is. Except for Bermuda has the best beaches in the world. Like, in terms of, like, the physical beaches, just, like, how they look and, like, the sand, best beaches are in Bermuda. So if you ever get a chance, they have these pink sand beaches that you go to. When you turn over, the sand is, like, turns, like, pink, and people would, like, bag them when we went out there. But, like, when it gets wet, it feels like you're walking on a foam mattress. So they're just, and the views are beautiful. It was amazing. Went out there, like, swam with dolphins. Like, we spent a lot of time out there. And then,
did you already have the travel bug before this experience?
I think I've always kind of had a little bit of a travel bug. We kind of traveled a little bit, like, as a family growing up. Like, we would go, like, take road trips and stuff to the family. But I wasn't from a really religious family, so most of our traveling was, like, for religious purpose on missionary trips and stuff like that. And then I kind of grew out of the religious phase very quickly for myself, but my family didn't. They were still there, so that was kind of always like a butting heads with my family. It was never, they didn't like that too much.
Yeah.
And then I think I always kind of like, everyone in my family just kind of always moved. Like, we moved from Africa, so I was like, never felt like I was home, kind of thing. I was always been like, yeah, but I'm still African, My family is very African. We ate African food, like we did African things. And my sisters, they moved, like when they were like after college, they moved to Boston as well. So my family, so I always kind of just wanted to know, like I wanted to go. And then the cruise line kind of helped me get started with that. And then afterwards, I just was like, oh, let me go everywhere. So we went out to Europe. I lived out in Barcelona for a while. We were out there, went to like a lot of the Mediterranean, went to like 10 different countries out there. And so ever since then, I've just been always kind of like, anytime I could take a trip or get out somewhere, I'm like, yeah, let's go. So I've been doing that. And that was really cool for a while. And then working on the ships was cool. I did that for about 2 years. And then I was like, okay, what's next? And got fired from another job because I can't listen to the people tell me what to do. I'm like, I'm 3 for 3. I've been fired from my last 3 jobs.
I think I know the title of this episode.
Oh my God. I'm like, I'm terrible at working for other people. Like, you can't tell me, I can't. I'm just like, yeah, I should do this. You're probably right, but I'm going to do something completely different. And then, so at that point, I moved to Boston. And that was like it was interesting. Because I'd probably say it was like I was about 27 at that time, and that was probably like, in a weird way, it was like the roughest year of my life, but one of the most pivotal points in my life. Like, people say you got to like hit rock bottom at a certain point, and I think that 27 was like my rock bottom year. Like a week before my 27th birthday, I had gotten fired from a ship. Yeah, I think it was a setup. By the way, it's a setup, all right? I believe it was a setup. So I'll tell you the story. You can tell me what happens, what your opinion is. So when you work on a cruise ship, they have they have bars for like everybody, and I can go drink at those bars. Okay. But specifically just for like the people that work on the ship, they have separate bars. Like on our ship, there was like 3 different separate bars just for the people that work on the ship. And then they would sell you like discounted alcohol, so you can get like a $7.50 or like for like $10 of like Grey Goose or like whatever, Jack Daniels, like all these crazy alcohols. You're paying like $10 for a bottle, but the legal limit on the ship was 0.02. Mind you, the legal driving limit in the United States is like 0.08. So it means if you like drank a sip of alcohol and then you blew over the limit, you could just get sent home just like that, which. I feel like that's it feels like they're setting you up with this, but there was one night we were partying. We were out on this on one of the crew bars, and I worked with some people on the sports staff. We were like the surf instructors, and we always used to like mess with each other. We had this new girl on our team, and she had come up and like squirted me with water, right? Like we were just playing. I was like, okay, so I'm like, all right, I see this. So what I did was took a big cup of water, and when she wasn't paying attention, I rolled up and just splashed her with this gigantic cup of water. But she was like around some other people, and one of the other people, to this day, I've never met this person. But that other person got splashed with water, too, because it was a gigantic cup of water. I probably shouldn't, but, it's reckless me. I'm like, it'll be fine. I'll figure this out. And so she reported me to security.
Oh, my God.
And first thing, what happens when you get reported, you get breathalyzed. Now, I'd already had some other strikes on my belt for just, like, sleeping through, like, 6 a.m. shifts and, like, just other silly things like that, showing up late to work, just silly stuff like that. But they add up. Mm-hmm. And then they breathalyzed me, and I blew, like, a 0.1. Like a 0.1 or 0.12, something like that. So it wasn't anything like a 0.4 or anything crazy. It was just like a 0.1 or 0.12. And then they just put you on grounds for automatic dismissal. So that was it. And I got sent home.
Wow. Yeah. For a splash of water.
You're right. Until this day, I've never met that funny. The irony, though, is that like a month later, she got sent home for the same thing. The person that reported me got reported and got sent home. All my friends were like, yeah, she got sent home too. I was like, yeah, I don't know. Karma comes around like that. Yeah, so, yeah, be careful, snitches.
You know what they say.
Yeah, exactly. They come after you too. Yeah, so then I'm 27. I get sent home, and we were in like Mexico at the time. I get to Boston, and I landed at Logan Airport February 1st in Boston, wearing hoodies and loafers with no socks. That's where my life was. If that puts it if you know anything about Boston, it was like negative 77 degrees, and I can't feel any part of my body, and I'm like, what is life? And that, at this point, I haven't even started doing comedy like legitimately yet. And I was like, okay, what next? Like, I have no idea what's happening. And
before you continue, can you tell me, given that you had done some mics when you were in Colorado and you're going through these life experiences on the cruise ship, is there a voice in the back of your head, or were you like, nah, this is new me?
No, there was always that voice in the head, like, I want to get back to doing comedy. Okay. I think that was the one thing that, like, even when I was on the ship, I was like, yeah, at some point I want to get back to doing comedy. And I'd watch comics come on the ship and, like, watch that and be like, I can do that. And I'd talk to them and ask them questions and stuff. I was like, yeah, I want to get back into doing this. I think what that time frame did, it kind of gave me some life experience, but it also taught me when I got back into it, what I wasn't going to do, which was, like, I'm not going to be drunk on stage. Like, I'm not going to go up there and just, like, I'm going to figure some funny things out and try to, like, go back. And so I think that kind of helped me get a better perspective. But I think a part of me was just afraid. I was like, like to get on stage, like, because what ended up happening was like, okay, I want to get on stage, right? But I was like, I just remember like how bad bombing and sucking feels.
Sure.
Like, it sucked. So I get back there and I move in with my sister. Now my sister's got 3 kids in like a 3-bedroom house or whatever, a 4-bedroom house. So everyone's got their own rooms, and I'm like, so I'm just sleeping on my sister's couch, and like my alarm every morning is my niece screaming because she doesn't want to wake up. Like at 6 a.m. every morning, and that's how I wake up every day. And I'm just like, I have no job. I got like $29 in my bank account. I'm sleeping on this couch, and I'm just like, what is life right now?
Yeah.
My 27th birthday, hey, 27. I'm like, Jimi Hendrix is out here writing fucking greatest songs, becoming the greatest guitarist of all time, and I'm sleeping on a couch, waking up to my niece. Like, this is not how I drew up life. And so I was like, okay, there's got to be a better way. So, at that point, things got even worse. My car got repossessed, like everything. I'm just like sitting there like, wow, this is not good.
This is a sitcom.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is where it starts, They're like, look at this guy, down on everything. And that was me at that point. But from that point, I was like, okay, well, we're already here. We got nothing else. So the only way is up from here. So I kind of started, so I started reading books. I started listening to podcasts, speakers, figuring just something out about my life and myself. And one of the things, like, okay, I want to get back into comedy. So I started driving into Boston probably that May or whatever, a couple months later. So I'd go into Boston and do an open mic like once a week or whatever. I'd take my sister's car. I'd go down there and try to do like some open mics. And like, all right, so I was like, okay, I'd show up there and I'd do some open mics every now and like once a week or whatever. And then it's probably like June or July. I went out there and I did this open mic set. And when I tell you I bombed like to the core of who I was as a person. Just went up there and I just ate a dick, like just choked on one, just up there, just dying slow deaths. I'm sweating from my forehead. My voice is hot. I can't talk. I'm just, I was like, I drove home. I'm like, I'm never doing that again.
Aww.
So this was probably like June or July or whatever. So I didn't do comedy for the next probably like 3-4 months. I didn't want to see anyone, and I would just make excuses like, oh, you're going to come by? I was like, yeah, and never show up, and I'd be like, I got to do this. In reality, I was just terrified. I was just scared to feel that feeling again.
Yeah.
And so there's probably October right now. This is like towards the end of 2017. It's October, and one of my friends, they were hosting this comedy festival or whatever, and they had like a bunch of different shows, and one of them was the open mic at this like bar room that like everyone had gone to in the town. I was living in Worcester, Massachusetts. Shout out to Brian O'Donnell and Sean Connolly at Nick's. It's great. This is like where it was like the homeroom, So I went, and Brian saw me, the guy that runs the show, and he's like, "Oh, Ben, you're gonna go up?" And I was like, I didn't want to tell him I was embarrassed. I was like, "Yeah, I'll go up." He's like, "Yeah, I'll put you at the end of the list." I was like, "Yeah." And I'm like, all right, but I'm gonna leave before this goes up. Like, there's no way I'm staying for this. There's no way. So, like, every comment comes up, I'm like, okay, they're on number, like, 5. I'm like, cool, I'm number 15. I'm like, yeah, I'll leave at, like, 7. It just comes to 7. I'm like, all right, this is kind of funny, I'll stay. Next thing you know, it's coming up. And next thing you know, I'm next. I'm like, well, I can't just run out now.
Yeah.
Like, oh, man. I'm like, okay, it's going to be all right. Just go up there, you'll get through it, and then you can just leave and never come back. Like, you're not going to do this. And then I went up there, and it went all right. And I was like, oh, okay, well, if I could get through that, then I can do this thing. And then around the beginning of 2018, I probably did like a couple more mics that year. And then the beginning of 2018, me and my 2 friends, Jesse and Paul, that I do the podcast with, were like, yeah, you guys want to like try doing this comedy thing, like seriously? And then that's kind of when it started for me. It was like the beginning of 2018. We were like, all right, let's start like going to open mics a couple times. We'll try to go like 3 times a week and try to go consistently. Mm-hmm. And from that point on, I've just been consistently doing comedy. So,
what do you think happened that night where you wanted to bail versus the time in May or June where you just thought you ate it so bad? What was the difference, do you think?
I think there was, when I look back on it now, it's like that time I bombed, it wasn't even like a bad bomb. It's like it was like there's probably like 5 people in a room at like 10 p.m. in a basement in Boston,
Yeah.
Like it's like there was nobody there, and I was just talking to no one, and I didn't understand like certain things about comedy. Like if there's very few people in a room, you're essentially having conversations with these people now. You're not like doing material to an audience, you know, and like, and I didn't know how to like do that at that time. And so I look back and I was just I didn't know that versus that other time I was in a room with people that I knew. I was very comfortable and the material could work, you know? So it was just like a different aspect, and I didn't have enough knowledge at the time to be able to separate the two. And then you kind of get those ideas in your head. You create like the bigger fears. You take something small and you make it like this monster fear, and it takes over your mind. And then over time, if I would have went up the next day and done something else, I could have had that same experience. But over time, the longer you wait to face that fear, it grows, you know? Now it's, instead of being this molehill, now it's a mountain that I'm staring at that I can't overcome anymore. So it was kind of that experience. Once I got through that, I was like, oh, I can handle bombing. It's no problem. So we started calling ourselves the doo-doo crew because
I love it.
Yeah, we would just go and throw doo-doo on a wall and hope it sticks, you know? So that's and so we just be going up, we're like, oh, you're trying any jokes? We're like, we got doo-doo, baby. Like, and it was just kind of like, it was just a different perspective on doing the same thing. So then it didn't matter if we bombed, you know? It was just like, oh, we're trying new stuff because we're new comics. Everything we do is new. So we're just throwing this on a wall and hoping it sticks and finding out. And kind of facing that and not being afraid to bomb or fail or have a bad set. And it was just a perspective change after that point. And that kind of helped just, cool. It's just, now it's a process. Whether you bomb or you do well, you're just going to be back the next day. It's like a basketball game or a gym workout. Like whether you score 30 points or you shoot 0 for 10, you play the next night. And it's just that same process of just repeating that. And I think kind of looking at it from like an athlete perspective, because I always grew up playing sports and like running track, playing basketball. Once I started looking at it like a sport mentality, in terms of like every open mic is just another practice. Some days I have good practices. Some days I have bad practices. Every set is like a game. Some days I have good games. Some days I have bad games. The idea is just to get to where I'm having more consistent good games than I am bad games. And if I have a bad game, I'm not going to stop playing basketball. It's not like I'm not going to be like, oh, can't play basketball anymore. I suck. Like, leave. It's like, oh, man, this game sucked. Let's do better next game.
Yeah.
What went wrong? Was it my game was off? Did I not prepare properly? Was I missing shots? Is it because I can't dribble? Because I can't shoot? Like, is it because I don't know how to do crowd work and it was a small audience? Is it because my material's not funny? Is it because my delivery isn't good? Did I stumble over my words? Like, what was it? So it's kind of like that same thing. Once I was able to
breaking it down into the technicals.
Right. Once I was able to put that together, I was like, okay, so that's what this process is. And then it just kind of became a process. And then it was just more. So we went from like 3 times a week, and then to 5 times a week to the next month. Now, the next year, by like 2019, I was doing like 340, 50 sets in a year. So it was like almost every night. So it was just that process of just like, okay, now we just get the ball rolling and we just keep it going. But it helped me like get a lot of growth and just, and it kind of helped me like ingratiate myself in the Boston scene, which I love as a comedy scene. So
I traveled to Boston, I don't know, when it must have been 16, 17. And I remember at the time I was doing comedy, but I was like open mic level. And I remember going to an open mic in downtown Boston, and it was like this cool little club on a corner, and it had a walkout stage, and it had lights.
Middle East?
I don't remember the name, but I could just remember the visual. It's got a bar. You walk in, there's this square bar in the middle of it, and then further in is this, you've got a traditional stage, but you could tell like they either had a burlesque shows there or something, because there's this walkout part of it.
Right.
And I remember loving that walkout. They don't have this in Austin. I'm taking advantage of it. And the people there were so nice.
I love the Boston comedy scene. Like, it was the one thing about it that I find very, I don't know, like comparative to Austin, is because I don't know what Austin comedy was like before the pandemic, but everything here feels so new, like it's all after pandemic. Like it's like AD, like, like after death, like it's got like BC AD here. It's like before pandemic comedy in Austin and after pandemic comedy seems very different to me. Like everything seems so new. Like I was here, the first night I moved to Austin was the night the Creek and the Cave opened. Yeah, so it was like, and even back then, it's been like a year and a half, all the rooms that were there, like the people that were kind of in charge and running things and doing shows, completely different in that like year and a half that I've been here. So the scene just, it's almost like the Wild West, you know, like it feels so new.
Yeah.
And like Boston had very established rooms, established spots, kind of, for better or worse, like gatekeepers or so.
Yeah,
So it kind of gave it a direction in terms of like, oh, there's clubs that you can like get in at and start doing consistent work for and meet people and doing feature stuff. And it's kind of like there's a hierarchy to it. And I was very used to that. And then I moved to Austin. They're just like, yeah, dude, you better grab yourself a lasso, get what you can. Yeehaw! Like, I'm like, what are we doing out here? I have no idea. So I was kind of figuring it out and kind of figuring out just what you're trying to do and kind of creating your own lane and kind of hustling a little bit more than I was used to comedically. So it was a big change coming out here, and it took some adjustment period for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the Austin comedy scene before the pandemic was the way you just described the Boston. You had a channel through the club, and there was just one club at the time, Cap City.
Okay, yeah.
And you had the small theaters, Fallout, Hideout, Cold Town, where, you know, they had mics, they had showcases, they had improv sketch, and then you had the Velveeta Room, which was the only real other small club. So you knew the channels, and you also knew the gatekeepers, because there
Right.
were definitely gatekeepers. And then because, you know, the Texas politics were, hey, open everything, that brought in all the new people and all the Creek in the Cave and Big Laugh to just be super aggressive about, here's places for you to perform comedy today, because those gatekeepers, they're not ready to come back out yet. And I was talking to Holly Hart recently for her podcast episode, and it was interesting, her perspective, because she was just kind of building momentum before the pandemic, and then, you know, since the pandemic and the reopenings and the crazy new scene, she says, you know, there was a huge difference between the two scenes. But now things are kind of leveling out, and you see people from the new scene mingling with the folks from the previous scene, and now everything is just kind of leveling out, and now you have more spaces to perform.
Right.
And so it's a little bit more chaotic, but I still think ultimately there's always going to be gatekeepers.
For sure.
And it's just figuring out, you know, which gatekeeper do you want to play in the sandbox with?
Right. I definitely noticed that. I think one of the things that I kind of lament was like the same thing that I'm sure that Holly was experiencing is like when I was in Boston before the pandemic, like I was doing every night, I'm doing like clubs, I'm doing like booked shows and good rooms, and it's like overnight it just stopped. So I was on pace to do probably 400 plus sets in 2020. Like it was, I took the first 10 days off of January of 2020. I was doing some traveling, of course, as I do. I've been to like LA, New Year, all this stuff. So I came back, and from January 10th to March 14th was the last set I did. I was already at like 80 shows, and that it was like 60 something days. I'd already done like 80 sets, and a majority of those were like clubs at like good rooms, like the good shows all around town. And I was getting booked a lot. I knew a lot of like the gatekeepers and most of the people that booked shows, and people were reaching out to me, and I was just kind of on this roll. And then it went from like doing comedy to multiple good like shows, sets a night, to doing nothing for 6 months, 8 months, or whatever it was. And that momentum just, and then me being me, I was like, well, I'm going to go out to Alaska for a while. So during the pandemic, I just disappeared to Alaska. And
that's what I think of.
Yeah. So, like, that's who my mind is like, oh, we're not doing anything here? Yeah, let me do some traveling. Like, comedy was the only thing keeping me from just, like, wandering around the world for a while. So I went into Alaska for, like, I was only out there for, like, a month probably during that. But in the meantime, they started up some shows, and at the comedy club I used to work at, and then they got other people to host all those shows. But it was really cool because we got to run. One of the cool things about it was because these shows were like outdoors in Boston, you couldn't do anything in the East Coast. Everything was shut down. It wasn't like Texas where they're like, pandemic, we ain't never heard of that. Open everything back up. Like East Coast was like everything was shut down, but you could do outdoor stuff. And there was a room that created this like these tent shows, and they were doing it outdoors, and they kind of had a little bit of pool because they owned like Laugh Boston. So they were able to get in like a bunch of New York comics that were like, like Bobby Kelly came through, Mark Norman, Joe List, Taylor Tomlinson, like, and we just got to like work with those, like me and a rotation of other comics got to host them. Ryan, he's from Canada. Ryan, is it Ryan Long?
Not Hamilton.
No,
Ryan.
is it? Ryan, I can't even remember his name, but yeah.
Was it Bob?
What's up?
Was it
No,
Bob?
Bob. No.
Sorry.
Yeah, we just called him Bob for short.
Yeah.
It's just no. So it was just really cool to like work with them as like me in rotation of comics, like hosting a featuring for him, and then like just watching him up close and like hanging out with like asking Mark Norman about his writing process and just like hanging out, you know. So it was kind of cool, like that experience. But the momentum definitely shut down, which was one of the reasons we moved to Austin. Me, Jesse, and Paul moved together. We were just like, all right, where can we go? They wanted to move down here because Joe Rogan moved down here. It's funny because I told my mom in 2017 when I was sleeping on my sister's couch, I was like, I should move to Austin, Texas. And I could just never.
That's funny.
Like, I couldn't afford it at the time. I couldn't figure it out, but I was always like, I want to move to Austin, Texas. Mostly because I hated the snow.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what is this snow nonsense? 6 months of winter. Fuck this noise.
Yeah.
I don't want to be here. And then when the pandemic happened, I was like, oh, well, now that I don't have good comedy spots or whatever, this is just like a good time to reset. And so that was one of the reasons we moved out here as well. But it kind of, that momentum dropped, though. That momentum stopped. And then moving to a new scene with no momentum. So, like, I came from doing sets every night kind of in that flow. Because if you do like 30 nights of comedy in a row, you step up there and you feel at home. You know, it doesn't matter the room or the people. You're just like, oh, I'm here. I'm in my comfort zone. And then once you lose that flow, and then I came out here to a whole new scene, and I'm trying to rebuild that momentum. And I definitely did not anticipate how much harder a challenge that was going to be, especially coming from, I don't know, like the pandemic, for better or worse. You found out a lot about yourself, and it wasn't like good sometimes in the sense that like I'm sitting, like, I do comedy every night, right? Like, I've been doing comedy every night for like a year and a half straight. And then it's like, who am I without this thing? And so you're coming from a very different place, not only comedically, but also mentally. Like, physically, you're not able to get out and do the things that you do, but like, mentally, you don't feel the same about yourself. There's kind of like, I've just been inside all day. I haven't done anything for all this. I haven't associated with these people. So you kind of like, so now I'm trying to do all that while moving to a new city. And so by the time I moved, like that kind of happened, that was like the end of 2020. Yeah. And then like when it got cold, we couldn't do the outdoor shows in Boston anymore. So we couldn't really do anything. So there was like no comedy there for like a couple of months. And I was like, man, I got to get out of here, do something. And then in 2021, we're like, okay, we're going to move out to Austin. We're going to plan it. We came out to Austin to visit. We're like, okay, we're going to move out here in a couple of months, probably like April or so. And I pretty much set up my whole life to move out here. And then in between, my father passed away. Oh. So, yeah, like right there. So now I'm just like, so like this, there's everything. And then I still end up moving here because my life was already set here. We had like a whole thing. I'm like, this is what I have now, you know? So I'm like, moving to a new city away from my family, still thinking about my father passing, with no comedy momentum, feeling kind of depressed and trying to build momentum in comedy. Mm-hmm. And it's like, at the time, I was like, oh, I got to grind, I got to do this. And then I'm like looking back and I was like, no wonder it was such a struggle, you know? Like when you're in it, you're just like, you always want to like blame yourself. And I'm like one of the type of person, like, it's always, I like to put things on my shoulders because if I blame other things, then I don't have any control over it, right? So if I'm like, oh, it's something I can do this to control it, then it feels like I have a say in what's going on and things aren't just happening to me, but I'm able to kind of dictate and steer things a little bit. Yeah. And so with all this going on, and I'm just like, why can't I just make it happen? Yeah. You know, why can't I just figure this out? Yeah, just brush my shoulders off and just grind. Why can't I just, you know, and you always listen to those motivational speakers who are like, you sleep? I haven't slept in 4 years. You know, like, you're eating? Is that what you're going to do? You're going to eat today? I never eat. That's why you're broke. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's this ridiculous mentality that we have. And I'm like, why can't I just like grind my teeth and grit it out, you know? And it's like, yeah, because all this stuff, like your life is in a wreck. Like you're not handling these situations and you're trying to do all this. And so it took me a very long time. So what I did was in 2021, I did what I do best. I traveled. So I took a trip. I went out to visit some friends in Colorado, and then I went out to Mexico, and I lived in Tulum by myself for like a month. Just kind of hung out and just kind of recentered, and I started seeing a therapist, and we talked, and we went through that for like 8-month period or so. And then it was like, okay. It's like, all right, you don't have to just be this, like, you don't have to be this island all the time, put the whole world on your shoulders and just, like, you carry everything all the time, you know, and it took me a while to figure that out. I was like, of course I was struggling to do comedy well. Of course I was struggling to hustle in a new scene where there's no direction and I'm trying to figure out something I've never done before with all of these things, but when you're in the picture, it's hard to see the frame, you know?
Yep.
So, and then that was kind of the thing. So, but after that, you know, and I took that, and then, okay, so we came back. It's like, what's next? So now it's just like, okay, it's like baby steps. What do I want to do here? What do I want to do here? Try to figure this out. Okay, let's get this done, and then try to set this next thing, you know? And so then this year has been a lot better. I recently got back from this trip, and I've started like, okay, getting back into the flow of things, and it just feels a lot better now that I'm back, and I'm more into it and getting, like, booked on a lot more shows and kind of doing that, having better sets, but it's all like it's coming together in time, you know. It just doesn't happen at once, and it took me a while to figure that out.
I mean, moving and losing a parent are like, you know, two major stressors in life. And like you said, if your identity is wrapped up in comedy and that's taken away from you, that's a big stressor to take on. So you got to work through all that stuff.
Yeah, you know, but you always want to be like, I'm the man, I don't need that. Nothing phases me. Like, I'm King Kong. I'll just pound my chest and get right through it, you know? Like, I don't know. It's just like, it's like, well, I guess toxic masculinity is the word they use for it now. You know, that I'm a macho man. I don't cry. I don't do anything. Like, I got this, you know? And it's like, that's kind of, being a kid in the 90s, boys don't cry, you know? You got to be a man. Like, stop crying, you know, figure your shit out. You know, I was like, that's kind of how I was kind of raised a little bit. So that's kind of how I viewed things. And it took a while to be like, nah, it's okay. You know, you could cry. Yeah. You're dad. You could cry a little bit. You can figure some life out. Like, you don't have to be this person. So, it just took going through that process to figuring out. But I think if you're able to get through that, you do come out the other side much better for it. And I like to think I did.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. That's probably incredibly relatable to a lot of people. You know, maybe not the specific elements, but just you know, being worn down and how the pandemic affected people in different ways is very relatable to just about anybody. A lot of stuff was taken away from people during that time, and then you go into a new city and everything's wild, wild west, because it's not the established routine that it was before.
Right.
And trying to figure out, you know, who are the people who's, again, this is harkening back to Holly Hart's episode, whose ass do I have to kiss? Who's the right person whose ass I have to kiss in order to get booked?
Right. Yeah. Hey, who's taking my second out here? Like, I want to get on some stage time, you know? Like, and then, just kind of figuring those things out. And I think one of the things about here is because at first everything was so self-produced right after the pandemic. Like, even like a lot of the shows at the Creek and the Cave were like, oh, someone else is producing the show for the Creek and the Cave. Not like they're the ones like that have a booker going out looking for people. So then it just became like, all right, which one of these people? I don't like that person. I don't think they're funny, but now, hey, what's up? You know, and that's never been my style. Like, I've never really been, that type of person. But I was like, okay, like when I was in Boston, I was like, okay, I will just all I will work on is just being on stage and being funny, and the rest will work itself out. And it kind of did in a sense. I met the right people. The right people started reaching out to me. So I don't even remember like reaching out to people like asking to be on shows or getting spots or anything like that. It just kind of like people were like, oh, this guy's funny, or we need somebody that's like young and hungry and willing to do some work. And they would be like, oh, reach out to this guy, you know. And I just kind of became like a go-to person in that. And then it snowballed. Everyone would be like, oh, we're seeing this guy everywhere. Let's get him on our stuff. And so I never really had to do the hustling kind of part that you had to do in a new scene. So, and here I've been like, okay, how do I get a little bit better about just like being proactive? Like, because a lot of people are moving here, and a lot of people don't know who I am. I don't know who they are, so why would I expect them to know me? And if they're booking a show, there's like a million people probably reaching out, and they're living their things, and I've been traveling for 2 months. They have no idea who I am and where I'm at. So it was just kind of being like, okay, it's nothing personal. It's not like, they don't think I'm funny, I'll show that. It's not like that. It's just like, oh, hey, I'm here. Remember me? I'm funny. Like, put me on your show if you want. If not, cool too. And so it's kind of been working out a little bit better. Yeah. But I used to work a corporate job as well. So in that whole time, I'm working a remote job where I'm staring at a computer screen 8 hours a day, and it's making me miserable. And I'm like doing like sales, and I'm just got to reach a quota, and I got to talk to people on the phone, and I'm just like, this sucks. Like this. Yeah, like that pit of the feeling stomach when you wake up every morning and you're just like, I hate this. I don't want to do this. Like, it got to the point, and then I had an opportunity earlier this year. My contract with the company ended, and they're like, yeah, we're going to go separate ways. I was like, thank God. Like, you too? Yeah, everyone else was like, what about this? I was like, I don't care. Send me the paperwork. Let's get this ball rolling. Like, I've had enough. And so in the past about 6 months now, I've been kind of just doing gig work, doing little side gigs, and kind of figuring that out. And the freedom I've had to just be able to, like, live my life in terms of, like, being able to go to a camp and work basketball with kids, or just go play with my friends, or go paddle boarding, or being able to show up to different activities and things that I want to do. That freedom has been so amazing. And, yeah, and I feel like I'm in a very good place right now. But it took a very long... I mean, it's 1.5 years into Austin now. I'm finally like, I feel like I'm in a good place. So it took a while to get there, but we're starting to feel like really good. So
good. Well, I'm bummed that you've been traveling so much, because that one time in May is still the only time I've seen you live. So
I got some. I think I'm going to be at the Creek in the Cave. Ariel Isaac Newman runs a show. I'm going to be on her show in November. And I'm doing some other shows around town, so I'm trying to get more to the Creek in the Cave. Whoever's reaching out to me, anytime you got at least 10 minutes on a microphone, I'm on the way, guys. So let anyone know. I'll do any show. Like I'm not one of those people that's like, well, how much are you getting paid? How much time? Like, I don't care. You ask me to do a show, what you want me to do? 5 minutes in an alleyway for? I'm there. Give me a microphone. No microphone, I'll yell. I'm there. Like, that's how I view it.
How did you get involved, or how did Edinburgh, how did it happen? Have you done it before?
No, I'd never been before. It was very random. So one of my friends, JT Stockman, he kind of told me, he's like, hey, we're going out there. Jimmy Clifford was going out there, Morgan Wallen, some other Austin comics were going out there with some shows. And they were like, hey, do you want to come? I was like, yeah. It was like that simple. And I'm kind of one of those people, like, if I say it, I'm just going to do it. And then a lot of other things kind of happened. One of my friends was having a bachelor party in Myrtle Beach. So I was like, okay, I'll go to him. I've known him since high school. I was like, okay, I'll go out there. And then my sister just had a baby. So I was like, okay, well, I'll go out to Boston. So I went out to Myrtle Beach, and I was there for like 5 days. And I reached out to some, I'm like, well, if I'm going to be here and some friends from town are going to be in, I'll just reach out to some people that book shows in Myrtle Beach, see if I can get some stage time. And we go out to Myrtle Beach, and so I hit this guy up. He's doing some sort of charity fundraiser show, and we show up there at this bar, like in the main strip downtown. And it's like a bunch of it's like a biker bar almost, like a dive bar. And it's packed with a bunch of rowdy people. And so this room probably fits maybe like 100 people or 75 people or so. And it's pretty packed. I'd probably say about 75 people in there. And the host goes up, and it is miserable. Everyone's talking through a set. No one's listening. He's telling the audience to shut the fuck up. He's standing on tables. His girlfriend's trying to fight people in the crowd. This whole thing is spiraling out of control. I'm like, this is what I'm going to have to do. So I asked the time, I'm like, and the other guy's like, okay, there's going to be the host, one comic's going to go up, and then you, and then this other guy's going to headline in the show or whatever. And I'm like, okay, how much time is it? And the guy goes, however much time you want. I was like, what? What do you mean? However much time you want? Okay. Well, now I'm like, now I can't go up there and do 5 minutes. Yeah. And all my friends from this bachelor party, like 20 of them are here. And so I was like, cool, at least my friends from the bachelor party are going to be here. And then they're not even sitting near the front. They're just in the back by the bathroom playing, but they're not even paying attention to the show. I'm like, now I'm just on this island. Like, I thought it was going to be them getting my back. They don't have my back at all. But I'm like, whatever. I'm going to be doing this thing. I'm like, okay, I'll try to do 15, 20 minutes. And yeah, we'll call it a day, you know? So the first comic goes up. I think the host, he was like muffled into the microphone, so people couldn't hear him that well. And so that's why he was kind of struggling. If the first comic goes up, he gets them for about 10 minutes, and then he kind of loses them, runs out of steam at the end, and the people kind of start getting rowdy again. So I'm like, all right. Whatever. I'm just like, I'm going to go up there and I'm just going to try to keep hitting them with jokes so that I don't have time to get rowdy. Like, I just keep coming at them and keep coming at them. And if they get rowdy, I'll roast them into the audience and just keep coming at them. So I go out there, I start doing my set. And like the beginning, I get them and start laughing. It's going well. And then I'm just like, after a while, I'm just getting after them, you know? And I'm starting to do crowd work. And at some point, I'm like, this room is drop dead silent. Like, you can hear a pin drop in there in between my punchline. I'm like, I got him. I'm like, well, can't stop now. So I'm just keep hitting him. And I look over and I'm at like 25 minutes in at this point. So I end up doing like a half hour for these people. And I've never done like a half hour, especially in that room, in that environment that's just so rowdy to be.
Yeah.
And all my friends are just like in the back. They're not even paying attention. They're playing like pool and stuff. They're the ones making the noise, not listening to me. So it was like, and it was kind of cool. It was like a confidence builder to be able to like do like a half hour in front of strangers. And afterwards, people are like, oh, can we take pictures with you? What's your Instagram? Like, oh, you were so funny. Come on my boat. Like all sorts of random stuff. Like, and I was like, whoa, okay, that was really cool, you know? So I was kind of juiced up from that. So bachelor party ends. I go to Boston. And I hang out with like my family and my nieces, meet my nephew, and he's like 3 months old. He's still just like sleeping like a lion, like 18 hours a day. Wakes up, drops a deuce, goes back to sleep. You know, like he's
that's what they do.
Yeah, prime baby mode. I was like, cool, carrying the little dude. So in the meantime, I reached out to some Boston people, and I was able to do some sets like every time I was there. And I go and I just like, everyone's like, oh, Ben, you're back in town, do me the show. And I was like, it was kind of felt cool to be like, yeah, like a homecoming. I'm coming back. I got a little juice around. People want to. And then not only that, but I was doing the sets. And I had really good sets like the whole time. And I'm just like, oh, so I did probably like 3 or 4 sets out there. And like I met some other comics, like comics that I respect in Boston that were out there like, yo, good stuff, man. And like we're talking about comedy and they're like on a level of like, oh, like we recognize that you have some a little bit like I was like, oh, this feels kind of cool. So kind of riding that high, I go up to Edinburgh. They're like, yeah, we get a house. We're going to be out there all month. We're running a show out there. And I was like, cool, I'll come out there for the last like 2 weeks. And we'll do, you'll be able to do a show on the night and like do sets each night. And that was very interesting because Scotland has a very different threshold for what is considered like edgy comic in the UK versus like in the US, you know? And even like comics here that were like, bro, you got as much edge as a basketball. Like you're as sharp as butter. Like and then like over there they're like, oh my gosh, he's an edgelord, you know? Like it's just so it's different vibes. And so I had to change up certain jokes I just couldn't do because they wouldn't understand references. Like I do a joke where the punchline is a Ford Taurus. It's about a Ford, but like they don't know what that is. It's not a car that exists out there, right? So like I do a joke talk about temperatures, and I have to like change it to Celsius. You know, like instead of roommates, you say flatmates. Just like these little things that you have adjustments that you have to make. Yeah. And I was able to kind of figure it out quick. Like I do a joke about here, I use a punchline where I talk about like 6th Street in Austin, but there I was like, man, I got to figure out where to use it. And I tried a couple places, but like Glasgow is like apparently the sketchy place in Scotland. So, you know, so it's like just figuring these little things out. But I was kind of able to adjust there in a couple of days. And then I had some really good sets out there. And I watched some comics from here, the U.S., like that are pretty good comics out here, go out there and eat some dicks. Like they went up there and they bombed a couple of times. I think we all did. But like there's a difference when everyone is doing well. And then you go up there and bomb versus when everyone's bombing and it's just kind of like what it is, you know? And I watched some of that. I was like, oh. And so I was able to have some good sets out there and figure it out. I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And so then I went straight from Scotland to Lake Tahoe in California. No, well, at some point I was in Toronto as well. I don't know. It was a blur. All these trips, all these days are a blur.
Keep track of you.
Yeah, and just So I was in Toronto at some point. I met some guys, played basketball with some kids. It was cool. We did some random stuff. Anyways, went to a burlesque show with this. I don't know. A lot of things happened. Anyways,
Toronto's got a great comedy scene. Did you do comedy?
I did not do comedy in Toronto. Funny. It was kind of a spur of the moment. I was only there for like 2 days or whatever, so we just kind of bounced in and out. But then I go to Lake Tahoe. And I needed that relaxation because Scotland killed me. Like, Edinburgh was really cool because the Fringe, if you don't know, a lot of people don't know about the Fringe. I knew nothing about it until I got there. So, Fringe Festival is Edinburgh is about 500,000 people. For the month of August, when Fringe goes on, it goes up to like 1.5 million. Like 1 million people come here. They do like 2,500 shows a day at like 250 different venues. Like there's all sorts of stuff. People are just barking in the street trying to get people to their shows. So all sorts of stuff happening there. But like the bars and everything stays open till like 5 a.m. Yeah, so we had a show. So my buddy Jimmy Clifford, I don't know if you know him. He's Jimmy.
Big guy at the Creek.
Yeah, love Jimmy. Great dude. He was running a show called his show that he runs here, Bomb or Get Bombed. So the way that the show works is like if you're on stage and you say a funny joke, the audience has to drink. If you're on stage and you say a joke that bombs, you have to take a drink. So we would be doing this show and we'd be like. And, like, the sets would go pretty well most of the time. Sometimes for some people. But, like, you're still up there holding a beer, and even people are laughing. I'm like, I'll drink to that, you know? So, like, we're already kind of got a buzz on by the time you get off stage. And so we'd go out till, like, 5 in the morning every night. Oh, man, I took some years off my life. I really did. And, I mean, as a black man in America, I don't have that many. I can't be cutting them off like that. I got to do better. So this is a very bold decision, you know? But And so we would go, so we would just bark all day. We'd bark with beer pong in the street. And then we'd be like, yo, American, is that beer pong? And if they, like, made a shot, we'd give them free tickets to the show and stuff. They're like, yeah, you guys, you know, like, are you from Texas? Do you have guns? I was like, yes, we do. You know, like, that's what they think about America. I was like, you guys are good, you know? Yeah. And so, yeah, so then we would just, this cycle, and we just do this every day. And by, like, the end of the trip, I lost my phone, my hard drive for my laptop crashed. I came back to America. No phone, like dying slowly, like limping back. I'm like, I'm not going to make it to 45 at this point. Like, this is not good. And so I went out to Lake Tahoe, and that was really refreshing. That was really cool. Just like in the middle of nowhere, just looking at the mountains, just trying to recuperate. Yeah. And one of the nights my flight was like leaving, and I had like a night in Reno or something like that. So I was like, okay, let me just look for an open mic. And I go to Reno, do an open mic. And the guy was like, oh, you're really funny. Why don't you come and do my show? I was like, cool. I thought it was going to be like a showcase. I'd do like 10 minutes or whatever. So I go there, and the guy comes up to me. He's like, yeah. It's like, I'm looking at the lineup. He's like, I think you're the funniest person here. I want you to close out the show. I was like, what? All right. You know these guys. I don't want them to hate me. Like, whatever. So I'm sitting at the bar waiting to go up, and these girls are like, I'm like, oh, you guys here for comedy? They're like, no, we hate comedy. I was like, okay, well. They're like, oh, are you going to go up there? I was like, yeah. They're like, okay, but if you're not funny, we're going to leave. Like, we're going to hate you. I was like, all right, fair. So I went up there, and I did like 20 minutes, and they're like, okay, you were funny. You want to come hang out and drink with other friends and stuff like that. But I think this whole process for the trip, and then, like, I came back and did a bunch of stuff. Like, I went to Colorado after that, and I came back to Austin. But the whole process for that whole trip was just kind of like, it was like a confidence booster, you know? Because sometimes you think you're funny, and then at the point you're like, oh, I am funny. Like, people think I'm funny, but there's a difference between thinking you're funny and not being sure versus being like, oh, I know I have like a solid, I can do like 15, 20 minutes in front of any audience, whether it's Scotland or like Tahoe or Reno, and like be good at it. So like it was like a very big boost, but it just kind of happened in terms of a lot of things were happening, and it just kind of fit perfectly in my schedule, so I was just able to make it happen, and then just kept it going. So the whole thing was just, it just happened to work out, and it was really cool, and I'm very grateful that it was able to work out like it did. Yeah.
It seems like part of your formula is get out of the environment that you're directly in just to get those boosts every once in a while.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's important to take a step back. Like, sometimes we get so caught up in the minutia of day-to-day. Like, we're working on just this day-to-day thing, and we're on the day-to-day grind, and we lose sight of the bigger picture. It's like, why do I do comedy? Like, for me, I think my favorite thing about comedy is I love the actual process of doing comedy, of writing jokes, of being on stage, of telling them. Sometimes they bomb, and how you react, and having good sets and all that. And I don't know, I think we kind of lose sight of that in terms of like, oh, we're not posting enough clips. Am I getting famous enough fast enough? You know, like all this kind of thing that you like think about. So, and then just life in general, we kind of lose sight of our bigger goals sometimes because we're so stuck in the day-to-day. I got to go to the laundry. I got to wash my clothes. I got to clean the apartment. And then you do it next week, and you do it every day, and you're just doing laundry, washing clothes, and cleaning the apartment, and you lose sight of like what your bigger goals and aspirations are. And I think for me, it's like every now and again you're running so hard with your head down, you got to stop, take a look around, kind of see the bigger picture, and then like get back to it, but kind of keep that in mind. And I think that's what traveling does for me. It's a little bit of a reset and allows me to see the bigger picture and kind of remember what I'm focused and what I'm trying to do. So that's why I like to do that, and just kind of I think it changes your perspective. The more you know, just the more knowledge you have, and it helps you know yourself more when you put yourself in uncomfortable situations or new situations. We're able to look deeper within yourself and kind of understand yourself a little bit better, and I think that helps you comedically as well. Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
that's kind of my perspective on the whole thing. So
very philosophical, Ben.
Yes, or as my brothers would call it, nerd.
Sure.
Fucking loser, dude.
Oh, man.
What, you reading a book?
They're not very nice to you.
Nah, I mean, we're very close. I love my family. I'm so grateful for them. Like, we are really close. But yeah, we talk a lot of trash. Yeah, my mom talks the most trash. My mom roasts me. No one roasts me harder than my mom. Like, now I can take anything. My mom's just like, yeah, what are you doing? Like, just, they're wild.
We're going to start winding down, and I'm wondering, is there anything we haven't talked about that you want people to know about you? You'll get a chance to do like official promo stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that I haven't talked about that people would like to know about me, not really. Like I don't know. I don't really like look at myself like, oh, this is what you need to know on this person. Like I guess the biggest thing about me is I think I just really like life. I like to say I'm on my third life right now, because like when I was in Africa. Yeah, that's also a crazy story. We didn't touch on this, but like just a little minor. Like so, when I was born, by the time I was like 1, my parents moved to the United States, but they couldn't get visas for all the kids to come, so we got stuck in Africa. So it was like me and my 6 siblings at the time, because my little sister was born here and my adopted brother was a little bit older. So we got split up into different families, and then like we were staying in Africa, and me and my brother, he was a little bit older than me. We both got in Africa. We got like kwasheko. Here it's like malnutrition. So like those pot-bellied African kids, and I do a joke about it, and it's so funny because like I do like a joke about it, and people are just like, they think it's a joke, but like this joke is based in like true story, you know. So I think it's always funny that people just think I'm joking, but I'm like, no, this is based in truth. So I got really sick, and my cousin, he also got really sick that we were staying with, like or he was around, and like me and him were the same age, like we were probably like 1.5 and less than 2. And we were like months apart, and he got really sick and he died. And I always like to think like it could have been either way. You know what I'm saying? He could be sitting here right now and I died, you know, like it was very close. Right. And so then like, I remember when we were younger, like if anything good, like if we had anything good at the house, like you imagine we get like a box of ice cream bars, right? Ice cream sandwiches come like what, 8 in a box. I'm like, if everyone in my family takes one ice cream bar, someone's not going to get one. There's 7 kids and 2 parents. Like, if everyone grabs one, someone's not going to get one. So, like, I remember my brother was always be like, yeah, when we were in Africa with no food, nobody was caring. I'm going to eat this ice cream bar right now. Like, be considerate, but I'm taking mine right now. So, you know, like, and so, like, I always like to, like, think, like, that was my first life. And then, like, the second time was when I was 17. I was leaving football practice in high school, and a drunk driver ran a red light.
Oh my God.
Just T-boned my driver's side. I'll show you the picture. I have it on my phone. Like directly, I was in the driver's seat. It was only me in the car, and he hit like directly my driver's side door.
God.
Yeah, so I was like in the hospital. I had like a collapsed lung, fractured sternum, like all this stuff. Missed the rest of football season that year. And like the doctor, I remember sitting there and I was all morphined up on the bed, and the doctor was talking to my mom, and it's like, yeah, normally it's like I'm surprised he's still alive. Like most of the time when I see accidents like this, like I have to explain to their parents why their son's almost dead. And it's just like these moments, like when I look back on it, I'm like, I realize life is very fleeting. Like these, like we like to take things for granted. We're always thinking tomorrow's gonna come. Like we're always like, yeah, tomorrow or next time or next week or this or next year or whatever. But like, and then another thing that happened was in 2021, I wasn't as close to my uncle, but my dad's little brother. He was, my dad was 69 when he passed away in February. Then in September, after I got back from Mexico, my uncle passed away, my dad's little brother, and he was like 53. And I'm like, man, I'm looking at these numbers. I'm like, I ain't got that much time left. I'm on my third life. I'm looking at I'm doing the odds here. I'm calculating like, I might make it to 70, maybe at this rate. No one in the family, none of the other males have made it that far. Like we're not, it's not looking that great. So I think it's just, and kind of jokingly, but at the same time, it's just like a reminder, like life is short. Yeah. And we like to think we have all this time, but you never know. So my whole thing is like, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to spend my time how I want to and doing the most that I can of all the things that I want to do and try to do all of those things to the best of my ability whenever I get the opportunity. And I think that perspective has just served me well in terms of, like, some people get mad when they go to a show and the mic's not right or the audience isn't psyched or they don't get enough time, they're not getting enough money or they're not getting whatever. And I don't worry about any of that. If I choose to do comedy, like I choose to put my time and show up there, then I'm going to have a great time. Because if I don't want to be there, then I just won't go. Yeah. Like, if I don't want to show, like, that's why it's silly to me. People get mad at an open mic. Like, if I don't want to do it, I chose to be here. Why would I be here and be mad about it? Like, it's such a silly perspective. So I think that's the biggest thing for me is, like, anything I do, I'm going to try to get the most out of it and enjoy it to the best of my ability because I'm just like, you never know. And if I'm going to spend the time, whatever little time or a lot of time I have left, I have no idea. But whatever time I have left, if I'm going to spend it doing any one of the things, then I'm going to have a good time doing it. And if I don't want to be doing it, then why am I doing it? And I think I look at the same way as, like, the work that I do and the comedy that I do, the mics that I go to and anything else. So that's kind of just like my life perspective in terms of that, is just like the freedom to spend my time, however long that is, doing what I want to be doing with it. And I think that's just kind of where, that's like me in a nutshell. It's just like, freedom. Like, I'm going to do what I want to do until I can't do it anymore, and that'll be it. So it's kind of my perspective on life and everything I do. So.
Yeah. Man, I'm torn between saying this is the mic drop moment where we just both walk away and that's it. But also I want to say, I might call this the Ben Talk, all caps. Just as good as a TED Talk. Or maybe I'll call it a Bob Talk.
Bob speaks. Yeah.
I'm going to have people around town calling you Ben. Bob. No, whatever. One of the names.
Yeah, well, listen, as long as they're calling me, I'm with it. You call me Ben, Bob, just call me. Put me on a show. I don't care what you call me as long as you're calling me to put me somewhere. I'm with it.
Okay, well, we are going to wrap up, and I'm going to ask you my closing question. One word to describe your future.
That one's a lot easier for me. Freedom. I just want to have the freedom to do what I want, when I want, and then just live. If I want to go somewhere, do it, have the money to do it, be able to, any idea or thing that I come up, have the freedom to make it happen. So my future, freedom. That's the word for that one.
Yeah.
That one I know.
and I'll just add color commentary that there will be no bossing around of Ben.
You can try. I won't even get mad. I'll just be like, yeah. No, I'm not doing it. Pretty much. You can't tell me nothing. It's I will say I've gotten a lot better at it now. At least now I'm willing to, like, listen, and if someone like, oh, that's a good point, But it's going to be very hard to get me off of doing what I want to do. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, that is a wrap on Comedy Wham Presents Ben Bosunga. Tell us where we can find you on social media and promote any projects that you have going on. Yeah,
so you can find me at Ben Bosunga on Instagram, Ben Bosunga on Facebook, Ben Bosunga on Twitter. And soon to be Ben Bosunga on TikTok. I'm going to break this fourth wall and get on that game. So look forward to that coming out. I post little sketches, reels, videos of comedy, whatever, and where I'm at. And then you can also check out the Lonely Man's podcast. Think OnlyFans, but Lonely Man's. And it's on anywhere you get podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. And then we also have a Patreon. Buy some merch. We have cool Lonely Man shirts. Join the Patreon. Listen to the episodes. Help pay my rent. They are very funny. We name names. We go in on detailed stories. It's pretty funny. So, so Lonely Man's Patreon and Lonely Man's on YouTube or Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts. And then, I'm just around Austin performing as much as possible. Find me on socials, and I post all my stuff there. So.
Very good, very good. We hope you've enjoyed learning about how Ben got to be the comedic genius that you heard today just as much as I have.
Genius, that's a stretch, but we're trying.
This has been Comedy Wham Presents Ben Bosunga. I'm Valerie, and that's been funny. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Mon plaisir.
Oui, de rien.